and welcome home. In this podcast, we venture into what it means to be a leader in this new world. Human, flawed but working on things, and forever changed by using our intuition to guide us. I'm Adelina East, founder of Transformational Healing and mentor to those running soul-based businesses. Join me to receive transformational healing, tips to dive more deeply into your unique spiritual gifts, and to hear great conversations with other entrepreneurs in spirit. Let's get started. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the Cosmic Leadership Podcast. I'm so happy to be with you today. I was meditating on how lucky we are here in this community to have each other. This podcast started out being named Light Beings and Way Showers, and you can still find some of those back episodes in the feed here for Cosmic Leadership. But I started this podcast at the very height of the pandemic, those first few months when everyone was off from work and we had no idea what was going on. And it's really continued. I've taken a few months off here and there, but I'm kind of amazed that we're still going strong. And that is because of all of you. We are still on the top 50 on the Good Pods ratings, and I would be so very grateful if you would take a minute and head over to your favorite podcast player and hit the subscribe button. Share this episode with friends, family, anyone you think could benefit from this. I would be so very grateful to also have you write a review on Apple Podcasts. It helps us attract new guests. And speaking of guests, we are having amazing human beings to chat with today. So I've written on social media several times, who do you want to hear from? What should we do next? What do you want? And everybody loves Anjie Cho. Anjie Cho is a Feng Shui expert. She's been on the podcast, I think 3 or 4 times now over the years. She was on this season, actually, a little bit earlier for her second book. And now we are going to have her again today for her third book. This book is a co-authoring effort with Laura Morris, and the book is called Mindful Living. Anjie Cho is a licensed architect and teacher of Feng Shui, meditation, and Dharma arts. Anjie is the owner of Anjie Cho Architect, PLLC, and Holistic Spaces. She's also the author of Holistic Spaces, Mindful Homes, and now this third book, Mindful Living. Her co-author for this third book is Laura Morris, who is also a Feng Shui teacher and tarot card reader. She's an artist, mom, wife, and avid traveler, and divides her time between her homes in Prince Edward County, Canada, and her farmhouse in southern Tuscany, Italy. Anjie and Laura are co-founders of the Mindful Design Feng Shui School, co-hosts of the Holistic Spaces podcast, and co-authored Mindful Living. I'm so excited to chat with them today. Some of you sent me some questions on social media, so I will be asking them those questions. One of them was about divination using Feng Shui. As all of you know, I love to chat with my spirit guides. I'm always happy to do sessions with people who want to contact their spirit guides, and I do often ask them a lot of questions. As far as divination goes, it's all up in the air. I think we all have free will. We all can change anything at a moment's notice. So just one thing to keep in mind there. But I will ask your question about divination with Feng Shui. And without any further ado, here is the episode. Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Cosmic Leadership Podcast. As you just heard in the intro, I am so excited to talk to our team today. They are the authors of this incredible book, Mindful Living. And I just can't wait to share more about this with you. So if you've been listening to a podcast for a while, you know Anjie Cho already. She is an incredible human being, and I've also known her for years. But we are so grateful and lucky to be joined by her Feng Shui partner, Laura Morris, today. They've written this book together. They have worked together for a while, and I'm excited to hear what they have to say about the specifics in this book. If you've heard my interviews with Anjie before, today will not be a repeat of that. So stay tuned for brand new Feng Shui information. Hi, Anjie. Hi, Laura.
Hi, how are you?
Hi. Thank you so much for being here, both of you. So let's get started. one of the questions that I have been so curious about is the divination using the mandala. Mandala? What's the best way to say that word?
Mandala. Yeah.
Mandala.
I think I say mandala, but I think it's the same. Yeah. And using it as the divination. Yes. Yeah. So I do a lot of divination separately. I read cards. I'm a tarot card reader as well as a Feng Shui practitioner. And, I think about this stuff a lot. I think about what divination is and all the different ways you can use it and to divine or to connect, essentially to just to top line it. You're really connecting with that inner knowing, with that higher self, as depending on what tool you're using. And Feng Shui in itself has, I think, and Angie, I think, its own divination tool, which is the bagua. And not only that, but the bagua, the bagua mandala, but even the things that are in your home end up being symbols, imagery, and items or that can tell you a story and that can give you feedback. So using the bagua mandala and to understand, it gives you those other layers. So you can find out, oh, the reason, if you look at your home, there might be something in a particular area of your home that means something, and it means something that, has layered meanings within Feng Shui, and that gives you insight. So it's similar as if you pull a card. You pull a card, you pull a tarot card, you look at the symbols, you look at the colors, you know that they have a meaning. A part of it is learning. You do have to learn the language of that particular, deck or the tarot. In Feng Shui is the same idea. So as Feng Shui practitioners, we learn the language of what your house means, basically. And then we read it. Yeah.
So cool. So Laura, how did you get involved with Feng Shui? Was it through divination with the cards or in a different direction?
Actually, it was the opposite direction. I got into the card. Feng Shui was my path. For me, was my path to these kinds of modalities. And I began as a designer. So I designed spaces, interiors. And as I became more in tune with energy, I am also a yoga instructor as well. And I began to sit, and had sangha and sat and meditated. All of those things sort of led me to want to seek out a path that was a little more in line with what I was doing. And so I worked with spaces. I loved energy, and I dabbled with Feng Shui for years. And then I decided to just really focus on it. So Feng Shui was my path into learning about energy and lineage and all of these ways to tap into something that is lying beneath, as well as a really powerful tool to be able to connect with your own intuition. And so for me, that led to me seeking out other, dowsing as well as cards, as well as the tarot. Yeah.
That's incredible. Angie, I know we've had this conversation so many times, but may I ask you to please just sum up for us a little bit about how you got into Feng Shui too, just for the listeners who maybe haven't listened to our previous episodes together.
Sure. Thanks for asking. So I also was in the design industry, or still am. I'm a practicing architect. And I also, Laura and I have a lot in common. This is why we're business partners. But Laura, I wanted to go a little bit deeper into my career. And so I started studying Feng Shui because I wanted to bring more spirituality into something that I do numerous hours a day, almost all your waking hours are often dedicated to work.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was really delighted to start studying Feng Shui and to see that it's more than what I thought it was. I thought it was kind of a superficial practice, but I think with everything, once you dive deep, you see there's an opportunity to see there's more depth, whether it's like your neighbor, right? So you can think all you want about your neighbor. And then when you get to know them and hear their life story, you learn so much more. So same with Feng Shui. I started to learn so much more, and it's really enriched my life. And like Laura, Feng Shui was really a wonderful way for me to get more in tune with my lineage and my cultural background. So I love that Laura practices tarot reading because it's connected to her Italian heritage. And for me, I was I was reconnected to my Asian roots through Feng Shui. And because I was born in the US and there was quite a disconnect. And so anyway, I wanted to really bring together my design work and make it more meaningful. And so that opened the doors to Feng Shui.
Oh, beautiful. I'm so grateful that it opened the doors to Feng Shui for you, because you've taught us here at Cosmic Leadership, but also just many New Yorkers, so much about Feng Shui. I would love to hear from both of you. What do you feel about the differences in practicing Feng Shui in a big city or in a little city? Does it feel different? Does it feel the same?
Yeah, it's definitely different. And that's actually a really wonderful balance that Laura and I bring, because I live in the city, in New York City, and I have a small apartment, and Laura lives in the country, and she lives in part-time in Tuscany and part-time in Canada, and rural Canada. So we have really different living situations. But she also lived in Toronto in like a tiny studio apartment. So she knows how it is. But I think that is much different. Like, I think that especially with New Yorkers, people who live in small spaces, and whether or not you live in a city, there's a lot of young people, I think, that are interested in having more of a smaller footprint in general. So I think that there's a lot that you can do with the space. And so I think a lot about like how people may work with multifunctional spaces. And I even talk about that in the book. We talk about this in the book. There's a section on Feng Shui for small homes. And it takes into consideration when you have maybe everything going on in one room, or if you're in a roommate situation, like, and you just have your bedroom, and how you can apply Feng Shui techniques. So usually that's the case where maybe there's some people who don't have access to what to do in the hallway, or maybe they don't have a great backyard to worry about, or a garage. Right. Yeah. So that's, but you can apply the same techniques, whether it's to just a room or if it's a whole home. Because for instance, we talk about in the book, we show like how you can lay the bagua mandala just on your bedroom. And that's a really wonderful way to start. And regardless of if you have a huge home or just your bedroom, or you could still, you should still start with the bedroom no matter what. And then Laura, what do you see as a difference?
Well, and we just talked about this, and Angie and I were really getting into this the other day, and I think we did a podcast about this. But honestly, I think if you stick with the rules, the feng shui, the basic feng shui rules, it is universal. And the differences for me, I would say, is the fact that I actually think smaller spaces give you, in a way, more freedom. Because the bigger the space, the more you have to work with and deal with. And a lot of times when people are working with feng shui, they feel that they need to do everything. And so to actually instead focus on the bedroom is a great way to start the practice. And because large spaces can be overwhelming. So I think in those cases, when you do have a really large property, and I actually, a lot of my clients do have bigger property when I was working with it, just because of, again, where I'm located. I end up working not only on bigger houses, but also on finding pieces of property to build a house, into the middle of nowhere type stuff. And so that's a slightly different technique as well. But overall, I mean, I think if you can focus just on your bedroom or smaller spaces, it ends up being a lot more liberating. At least I think that.
I mean, I think that's incredible too. When I moved into this house, I bought this house about a year ago, almost to the day. And I've never lived in such a space. Like my last apartment was 200 square feet. The one before that, I think, was 800 square feet, but I was sharing it with my husband at the time. So, New Yorker at heart, having a big space feels very overwhelming. But as Angie suggested to me, and as this new book of the two of you suggests, I did just start with the bedroom here, and I feng shuied the bedroom to the best of my ability. And then I moved on to the office. I haven't moved on to other areas of the house much, because I just need to take my time and kind of feel out the space and see what it's calling for. So I love that whole idea of, it's actually kind of liberating to only have to do one space. And I think doing it slowly helps too.
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
I know we talked about this a little bit before we started recording, but I would love to hear from you, Laura, about the 24 solar terms, just because I feel like it's something that I was 100% unaware of until I read your book. Angie and I have feng shuied my New York apartment. She advised me a little bit on this house and just kind of like placing the bagua map at the door and following the different areas. And by the way, everybody, they have a bagua map on their website, which we'll link below. It's in this new incredible book. You know, we'll talk about that some more throughout the podcast. But Laura, will you talk to us a little bit about the 24 solar terms? It's such a new concept for me and probably for a lot of our listeners.
Yeah, it's funny you should say it's new because it's like ancient. It's a very old.
Ancient.
Yeah. 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 No, and it's interesting because it's quite old, but it's also almost intuitive. You know, like some of us might think that we don't, and we kind of know about it, but we didn't really realize that we sort of knew about it. So it is it's an ancient Chinese way or calendar. It's called the solar calendar, solar terms. And it is a way of mapping or tracking the changes of the seasons. And so there's 24, there's approximately roughly 2 solar terms in each month. And so they're micro seasons, and each of them has a name, and some of the names are really lovely and it's descriptive. And over the years, farmers, it became for a practical reason, and it was farming because they needed a reliable way to sort of think of, oh yeah, at this time of year, this happens. And they would track it so that they knew when to plant things, when to harvest things, when are the festivals, and so it really shows how, agrarian societies really lived in harmony with nature, which living in harmony with nature is, the underlying theme of all feng shui. Right. I'm personally super interested in it because I live in both rural communities in both Canada as well as in Italy. And so it's really interesting to see it actually in real life. And this is the Northern Hemisphere. China is the Northern Hemisphere. So what we're talking about is all in the Northern Hemisphere, these solar terms. And they, depending on climates and where you are, obviously it's going to differ, but why we kind of put it in there is because now you can sort of look at the energy of each month from so many different ways. And one of the ways is like, what were the ancient solar terms that were prescribed to this month? Well, it was these. And what does that mean? And then think about, well, what does that mean for me where I live? Mm-hmm. And then it's just one more way of getting connected with what is going on around you, and really trying to get more connected with nature and with the seasons. Yeah.
I think that's so cool. Can you give us an example of one of them?
One of them is actually coming up in September, and it's one of my favorite names, and it's called White Dew. And White Dew is September. It's September 7th, and it's really evocative of early September. The nights are everything's getting colder. So we see it as energetic shift from yang and yin. So the yang qi is diminishing and the yin qi is increasing, which means that it's no longer as bright and hot during the day, and the days are shorter and it's getting colder and it's darker earlier. And so when you wake up in the morning, you go for a walk and you see dew on the grass, white dew. And it's really evocative of the energy of that month. And there's lots of other layers to it. That month in feng shui, again, we look at the elements, and it's metal element that's coming in, which is white. And dew is a yin water. So there's lots of, that's why I think partly why I love these so much is that they are like almost little poetries of the way looking at nature. They're so beautiful.
Yeah. Can I share one of my favorite ones? Okay. Please. I love the solar term that's called the awakening of insects, and it's at the beginning of March. But I just love that term And one of my flower teachers, actually, we were talking around that time, and she remarked how she saw the cutter ants marching like armies of, Genghis Khan over towards her trees. And so there's just these beautiful, poetic, very, like Laura says, evocative descriptions, and they describe what's happening in the world around you. And a lot of the aspects of the world that we have lost touch with as modern humans.
Yeah.
And so it can be so beautiful to just notice that this is what's happening in the world around us. Like, the white dew and the awakening of insects. And that's really like what Feng Shui is about at its core. It's about reconnecting with the world around us, noticing that even if we're in a modern city or we're in the rural countryside, that we have this connection to our homes and the spaces that create, whether it's a cathedral of trees or if it's our bedroom.
Absolutely. And I think the listeners will love to hear about too is, like, for example, if you buy the book, which I highly recommend, you get these beautiful illustrations of certain things to show you what that solar term looks like. So, for example, that's clear and bright at the beginning of April. Like, how beautiful is that, And that is sort of the beginning of April, clear and bright. And then it's just rain all the time, which they call rain showers. They have a nicer way of putting the things that happen that maybe we're not so wild about.
Exactly.
So I think it's also nice to be able to read and connect to those things, because in our modern world, we get going so fast and we're so busy that we kind of forget that, like, this all has to happen for a reason. Like, we have to have clear and bright time. We have to have rain showers time in order to have the crops that we need to eat and all of those kinds of things. So what I loved about your book is not only all of these terms that were new to me, though they may be very old, but also that it sort of made me see another way of thinking about nature, rather than just like, oh, it doesn't serve me to have to carry an umbrella everywhere I go for like a month. It's better to have that month so that we can have the food that we need.
Yeah, and actually a lot of, even if you're not familiar with the solar terms, you probably are familiar with four of them, and which would be winter solstice, summer solstice, and the vernal equinox and the autumnal equinox. Those are actually four of the 24 solar terms. So you can see that is, some of us, we don't really kind of know it, but we do sort of know it, or like know, oh, this is the time when the harvest comes in and our farmers markets are full. There's like that. These are all, that's called the beginning of autumn.
Right.
It's funny. Like it kind of, what I like about it is it literally puts it down on paper in our book, but it sort of really gets you to appreciate, makes you more mindful, because you're like, oh my goodness, I love that there are like every 2 weeks, there's a new, new thing happening around me. And yeah, I see it. I really can feel it and see it.
I am so delighted to share with you that I am opening back up my multidimensional mentorship program. We have seen graduates go on to start their own businesses with their intuitive gifts, such as channeling, healing, tarot card reading, astrology, human design, chef, also so many other beautiful professions that are healing the world and making it into the better place where we all want to be. If you are struggling, if you're trying to figure out what your life purpose is, check out my multidimensional mentorship program. I am so excited to work with people who are ready for change, who are ready to dive into their intuitive gifts and see exactly what they're ready to do here on this planet at this time. We will put the link below, and I look forward to hearing from you.
And it gives us a way to celebrate the changing of seasons and the changing of time, and to pay a little bit more attention to it. And then there's a greater teaching of how those seasons also occur every day. Like when we get up in the morning, it's like the springtime. And as it's noon, it's like the summer. And then as the sun starts to set, it's like the autumn. And then we go into our winter sleep at night in the darkness. And then that also echoes like our human cycles, right? Like we start out as a child and we grow, we start out as a sprout, And then we, have the summer of our lives, and then we move into those autumn years that we get older,
Right.
those more poignant years. And then we have to go back to, we learn about impermanence, that we all kind of die and then we start again in those rebirths. So so it reminds us of all these greater cycles, which I think for me is comforting in a lot of ways, because we can trust also that the sun will rise every morning.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I agree with you. I find that comforting too. Like the things that we know for sure will happen, especially right now in the world. It's nice to have some things that we know for sure will happen. I know we've talked about this in previous podcasts, but just for those who are brand new to your work, can you explain to us the bagua map or the mandala and how to use it? As you talk about it, I'm going to put your book's version up on the screen for a moment so that people can kind of see it. It's over here.
Yeah, so Feng Shui uses many tools, and one of them, which is kind of popular if you've heard about Feng Shui, is called the bagua. And bagua translates to 8 areas or 8 images. So it's 8 images around a center. And so it's a mandala because there's a center point and then it radiates out into 8 directions. And so generally this means that there's actually 9 areas, because the center can count as an area. And so these 9 areas, including the 8 around and the 1 in the center, represent different things. So different life aspects. The most popular ones are relationships and wealth. But all of those categories also have different layers of meaning, different facets. Like there's a color association, there's an elemental association, there's a shape, there's a zodiac animal, there's a direction. So there's numerous, countless, infinite connections to each area. And so this also is like that divination tool. It's a divination tool that you can overlay on your home to give you a sense of what is happening in your life. So you can visualize that you're like, wherever you are, you have a front.
Yeah.
You can face the front. There's a behind you, there's left, there's right, and there's up and down. This is like your own mandala around you. So similarly, the bagua is a way to look at all those areas of your home. So like one really easy way for someone to maybe figure out the 2 popular ones, the wealth area and the relationship area, is to work with our bedroom like we talked about. So you could stand in the doorway of your bedroom looking in, and the far left corner is connected to the wealth area and the far right corner is the relationship corner. So that kind of gives you an idea. And then you could also further divide it into a 3x3 grid, like a Rubik's Cube or a tic-tac-toe, and figure out all the different areas. But just real quick, the two most popular ones are wealth on the left corner and relationships on the right corner.
Right. And if those of you who have purchased the book are following along with us, we're on page 83 and you can see their bagua map here. What I think is cool is that the 2 of you have decided to retitle some of the things. Like I know that alignment used to be called something else and reflection used to be called something else. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So originally these names were in Chinese. So we did include the Chinese names as well as the trigrams from their original iteration where they came, connection to the I Ching. Right. So when you begin to study Feng Shui, you'll realize that many areas can be called many different things. And so Angie and I decided to come up with words that were sort of broader, that spoke to the essence of each of the areas. But we still talk about, just so for frame of reference, we still bring it in. It's like, oh yeah, wisdom. Well, what's wisdom? Well, wisdom is actually that, the part that is career. Okay. And because if you dive a little bit deeper, that's actually the underlying meaning for them. So we tried to come up what is the essential underlying meaning for each of these areas so that it doesn't pigeonhole them too much. Because the important parts of each of the guas is that they are almost, infinite in ways, the meanings that can be attached to them, the layers of meaning. And it allows for more creativity and it allows for more flexibility when you're working with them yourself.
And I think that's so smart because I was talking to a friend yesterday who's really very schooled in Feng Shui, and we were looking at the book together. And she was addressing directly what you just said, that wisdom is actually career. And she's at the moment, she's raising kids, which is a career path. And she said, I used to always feel so bad about myself when I'd look at the bagua map and be like, well, I don't really have a career right now. I mean, I used to, and I will again someday, but right now the focus is the kids. But now I can look at that wisdom area and put like learning games and things for the kids in there. And that also feels really important. So I like that you've done that. I'm sorry. You looked like you were about to say something, Anjie. What did you want to say?
Oh, yeah. That's also part of it too, because when those generic labels, or when those labels that are most commonly used were created, it was in the 80s.
Right.
And a lot of them are actually outdated now as well, because for instance, the relationship area used to be marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not really totally relevant to always talk about marriage anymore. And not everyone wants to get married, right? And not that they did in the 80s either, but it's not as politically correct and it's not as relevant. Or for instance, our reflection area is sometimes called children or completion, but not, and we understand that it's not about children, but it's not excluding people who don't have children, because children, it means children. It can mean your descendants. It can be any kind of offspring that you create, but it also has all the other nuances. And also, I think that the top level words that were originally given that somehow stuck to the bagua don't really speak to where this comes from. And these areas come from the I Ching. And if you look at the I Ching, these trigrams aren't called career, actually. So there's no mention of career with that area as well. So it's really, so there was a lot of reasons, but I think also that's when like Laura and I never call the kun marriage, and I haven't called it the marriage area in years, because you just don't, that's not how we talk anymore. Just like you wouldn't say like, this is related to the husband, and then the husband goes here and the wife goes here. So we don't, we've modernized it. We're in 2024 now, right? Yeah.
I love that. Thank you so much for being the leaders in modernizing this, because I do think there are areas of the bagua that made people feel bad about themselves. I mean, the career area made people raising kids feel bad. The children area made me feel bad. I think that it's important to move with the times. And I feel so lucky that you two are leading that movement. Thank you for doing so.
Thanks. Yeah. No, I think we wanted to make it, again, connect back to the depth of it, the I Ching, but also still keep it really accessible, which is important, really, so people can understand it. We didn't want to get too esoteric, but honestly, when I look at all these names we've come up with, they stand up, they really do capture it really well.
So are there any last words you would like to say about the book that are your favorite parts of the book? I think it's always important to hear from writers what their favorite thing is in their creation.
Well, my favorite part of the book is on page 58 and 59, which is actually the bedroom bagua mandala.
Nice.
And and I really love this area because Laura and I took the lead on different parts of the book, but we really wrote both of the entire book is written by both of us. We've both touched every part of it, but one of us took the lead on different chapters. And this one I really enjoyed because I guess a lot of it's my diagrams too. So all the floor plans are my diagrams. And I just love explaining visually. So, and that's why I also love the books, because there's so many photographs that illustrate much more than we could ever say through words. So I really love this part because it really reminds people that they can work with whatever they have, that even if they just have a bedroom, if they're just have their room and they have a roommate, it doesn't prevent them from having good feng shui or an ability to apply feng shui to their lives. It doesn't hold them back. And so I really love that. And I always love being able to start simple. And also, I work a lot with people now, clients one-on-one, that maybe are like too stressed out, too busy to draw a floor plan, but everyone can show me their bedroom over Zoom and I can help them with their bedroom. And that's key because I think sometimes like the time commitment and the challenges with like drawing up your own floor plan really stops people from even thinking about incorporating feng shui into their lives.
It's a barrier to entry for busy people, for sure. And I love that you focus here on the bedroom bagua. And for everybody listening, there are like 3 different diagrams that you can look at to figure out where your bedroom door is even. Like she just makes it so easy. So do not be intimidated. If you feel like you have no time and you have no energy for this, just get the book and take a look at the bedroom bagua mandala, and you're going to see exactly what to do. Like it's very step by step. So thank you for doing that. And what about you, Laura? What's your favorite part of the book?
My favorite part is chapter 2, which is the feng shui of color. And specifically, I really love the color stories that Angie and I did, 33 to like 36 on the pages. I did take the lead on it. But again, as Angie says, we both kind of, we created it together. It's actually so great to have someone else who knows you well enough to go through it and just make it better. So I feel like we both did that for each other. And the color chapter is really personal to me. I'm an artist. I have my master's in art history. And so it was really cool to just really start thinking about pigments and colors and like why we use color and how we use color, and then connecting that with the energy, because I do think these stories, these histories, these cultural uses make things stronger and connect, using these colors over and over through different cultures and different centuries. And, they give them power. So I really loved writing about each of these colors. It was so much fun. And yeah, I love color. I love painting and I love art. So it was a really fun part to write for me. Yeah.
I second that also because it allowed me to look at color really differently. So in astrology, I'm a double Cancer. So I love water, anything to do with the sea. As you can tell, I have just blue constantly around me. My clothes are blue. My glasses are blue. Everything is blue all the time. And I think in like a Western world perspective, people are like, oh, blue, it's like I'm feeling blue, the color of sadness. I tell you the very truth. I have met very few people in the world who have such great brain chemistry as I do. I've been pretty chipper for most of my life. And blue for me is just like my expression of emotional depth, I think. And so when I was reading, and I'm a therapist, so emotional depth is my thing. When I was reading your green and blue color story, I was thinking to myself, yes. They write about, for those of you who don't have the book yet, they write about how green is creative and expansive, like the height of spring when nature's at its peak. And then deeper blues are more connected to spirituality and spiritual depth. And as an intuitive channel, that just rang so very true for me. So I really enjoyed reading your color stories and the fact that it was a different way of looking at color than I think most people think of.
Yeah, thank you. I really had fun creating it, and it was fun to look at it from so many different perspectives, like from my background in art history, feng shui, as an artist, and it really, in cultures and different cultures, it really was really fun to bring it together.
Yay. Well, it's so beneficial for all of us. Thank you both so much for being here. Thank you for devoting your time to making our lives better with Feng Shui and helping us create peaceful spaces for us to rest in from the very busy and chaotic world.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you.
for having us.
Thanks for having us. It was fun.
Thank you so much for listening to these important conversations about cosmic leadership and the changing needs of our times. If you enjoyed this conversation, please rate and review this podcast on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also share it with a friend. Join our crew at Adelina East on Instagram or at Adelina East Healing on Facebook. With all the love from every dimension, Adelina.